on to our first speaker, and that's Laura Tobin, who I'm lucky enough to have known and worked with for many years. In fact, I'm the one that actually convinced her to come and join me when we both worked at the BBC Weather Centre many moons ago. Laura now presents the weather on ITV and is a passionate climate communicator. In January 2020, she went viral when she challenged an Australian MP, Craig Kelly, about his views on climate change when talking about the Australian wildfires. And in 2021, Laura visited Svalbard in the Arctic to show the impacts of a warming planet on the landscape, animals, tourism and people. She's written a book called Everyday Ways to Save Our Planet to help people make small and big changes to make a difference and learn more about why warming matters. She's visited COP26 in Glasgow, COP27 in Egypt, and is always communicating, covering the progress of things we're doing to tackle the climate emergency. So I'm going to hand over to Laura now for her to share her screen, and I'm really looking forward to this. Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty, and hi to everybody who is watching. Now, I think the big thing about all of us is that we share a passion for weather, and yes, climate we should be hearing more about later, but actually in our country, we love the weather. It is something we talk about the most. The question we're being asked at the moment is, when is it going to stop raining and just on cue? I feel the sunshine on my face. But on average, we talk about the weather 3 times a day, probably within this circle. You could probably times that by 10. 90% of us will have spoken about the weather in the last 6 hours. On average, in our lifetime, we spend 4.5 months of our life talking about weather. So what's better than talking about weather? Taking photographs of it. So I just thought I would run you through some incredible pictures that we've had sent in before to the RMETS team, and to talk through the people who took them, why they took them, how they took them, and add a little sprinkle of science along the way. So first of all, I'm going to start with clouds. Clouds are sort of the everything to us in the world of weather. And clouds first started being classified by Luke Howard in 1802. And there are 3 basic types of cloud. There's stratus that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. There's cumulus, which is next to it with the CU. And then right at the top, we have cirrus. And they're the 3 most basic types of clouds. And clouds all have Latin names. So stratus is Latin for layer. They're the grey skies that stretch across, grey clouds that stretch across the sky. Cumulus clouds is Latin for a heap or clump or fluff. They're the lovely little white fluffy clouds you see. And cirrus is Latin for a wisp of hair or a horsetail, and they're really high up in the atmosphere. In total, there are 10 main groups of cloud. They're called genre, and they're split into low, medium, and high. And again, they're all linked to Latin words. So alto means medium level. Nimbus means that it's rain bearing. So you have various combinations of alto cumulus or cumulonimbus or the cirrostratus up there. So they're high, wispy ones, but also layered. And so they're the type of clouds that you are set to see out there when you're taking your photos. And there are many, many more subspecies as well. So cumulus, for example, there are 9 different types. The first is cumulus cumulus. It's the tiniest, fluffiest cloud, cumulus cloud, and then they extend and get bigger and bigger and bigger all the way to cumulus type 9, which is the cumulonimbus one, the one on the left of screen, which is the one where we have the anvil that hits the top of the atmosphere and then spreads out, and then you have anything between 1 and 9 in between. For those wondering, I have 2 favorite clouds. I can't pick just one. One is called a Kelvin-Helmholtz wave that literally looks like crests of waves in the sky, and it shows that actually, while the atmosphere is technically solid with these physical clouds, but it actually is a liquid. It moves like a fluid, and you can see that with the waves. And also one called Altocumulus castellanus, which literally looks like castle turrets in the sky. So they're my favourite clouds. So we will move on to the photos, and I shall check my notes for all of these. So this is the first photo we're going to show you. And oh, sorry, before we move on to the first photo of the winners, I just wanted to show a photo that, if I did enter, this is what I would put in. I was lucky enough to be in Andorra just last month for a weather meeting of European weather presenters. And we saw this. We got to the top of the mountain. And first of all, we saw the ring around the sun, and we were all just super excited. And then we looked to the left and the right, and we saw more things shining. And then we looked higher and lower, and then all the way around. I think in the end, we ended up seeing around about 10 different optical phenomena. So ironically, a team of weather presenters who are meant to be going up a mountain to learn more about climate change and skiing got sidetracked for about half an hour taking a million photos and trying to translate all the different optical phenomena that we'd seen on the mountain in our various languages. But either side, we have the sundogs, we have the sun pillar in the middle, and then what you can't see, there was a ring that stretched all around us horizontally. That was called the parallel circle, which is exceptionally rare to see. We looked up and then we saw the upper sun cave, and then we looked up again and we saw the circumzenith arc. So it was incredibly rare to see all of these, and some of our photographs I'm going to show you include some of these optical phenomena, and they happen for various reasons: scattering of light or from ice crystals, mostly because of where the sun was and because of how many ice crystals were up the mountain that we were lucky enough to be up. So yes, very cool and very lucky to see all of those together. So let's move on to our very first photograph. So this was the Standard Chartered Smartphone Weather Photographer of the Year winner for 2023, and it was called Braving the Storm by Les Irving, and this was taken in Sydney in Australia, and the caption is, "Would you surf a scene like this?" So he caught this watching the surfer looking at the broody conditions out to sea in Australia, and just wondered what was going through the mind of the person stepping out there, wondering if the conditions were perfect for surf. Now, one of the beautiful things that you can see, obviously, the big rain clouds in the distance. You can see the darkness coming from the clouds. You can see that there's showers, actual rain falling from those skies. So they're shower clouds. Those clouds are convective clouds. So they're on the cumulus group, those fluffy heaps and clumps, probably somewhere around about cumulus type 7, I would say, but can't quite see the top. It may even stretch to the top of the atmosphere to give a type 9. And you've got the blue sky above it. So the skies are blue, if you think back to your GCSE Science Day, because of the colours of the spectrum. And our atmosphere scatters light from the longer wavelength. So that's the blue wavelength. So that's why we see the blue light scattered to our eyes. And this is something called Rayleigh scattering, because it was Rayleigh who first discovered this. So just a beautiful, beautiful scene there with the sky and the sea, with this amazing divide, and just the real atmospheric feel of that storm brewing with those huge waves crashing. The next picture probably couldn't be further away. That was from the beautiful beaches to the very, very cold. So this is from a mountain range in Germany. Christopher took this one, and the caption is "Incredible Ice Sculptures." So he described how it was otherworldly up the mountain. There were so many factors that came together to make this. First of all, sub-zero temperatures. Of course, it was freezing cold up there, but very strong winds as well, and actually had been really foggy. So fog is just very, very, very moist air, and when it hits cold surfaces, it produces rime. So layers and layers of rime and ice form, so super cold water droplets and freezing fog hitting these surfaces, making these really, really, really thick ice sculptures on the landscape. He was at 1,200 meters in height, and he said that it took a lot of persistence to capture these photos because he had to stand in the landscape in very strong winds at -14 degrees Celsius. So yes, some people have to suffer for the beauty of the photographs they're set to take. The next one is a beautiful nighttime image, and I think the thing that just jumps out first of all are the red scenes right in the back, and they're called red sprites. So these are red sprite lightning over Amadrive Snow Mountain, and this is in Tibet in China. They are incredible. You may not have heard of sprites before. It's actually an acronym for stratospheric protrusion resulting from intense thunderstorm electrification. They're essentially space lightning. So we have lightning on Earth that happens below thunderstorms. What happened here, the photographer was out in a blizzard, the snow passed, the thunderstorms moved into the distance. He took the opportunity to capture this photo because the lightning bolts came from above the storm into the sky, and these discharges of lightning were just observed for a fraction of a second. They're really, really hard to observe and incredibly rare to capture so beautifully as well. So yes, those are red sprites. The next one is Cloud Sea over Mountain, and this is in Myanmar. And I think this is just a really beautiful example of how the atmosphere is a fluid. It almost looks like you've got an infinity pool there with water flowing over the edge, but actually they're obviously clouds. So what's happened here is that we have the clouds moving in, the water moves in, air condenses, cools, makes clouds, and then it hits the mountains. And you also have air sinking. And we have an invisible lid on the atmosphere. So the clouds can't rise anymore. They've hit this invisible lid, and that's as high as they're set to go. And then they stay beneath that level. And so they're just a trapped layer of humidity at this exact level. So it almost looks like the landscape there is a sea of water, a sea of clouds over the village. So the photographer said that he loved to capture the wonder and nature of this beautiful scene and the cloud-like sea that was in front of him. The next image is another nighttime one, and this is called Dream Ring. Now, these are incredible clouds. They're called Noctilucent clouds. They don't happen very often. They're essentially space clouds, so they happen above our atmosphere where the weather happens, about 80 kilometers high, and it's sunlight scattering off ice crystals from tiny, tiny dust and tiny meteorites that are in the atmosphere. They can be really faint, but on summer nights, when we have a short time after sunset, when the sunlight is just hitting the cloud droplets at just the right height, then it can cause these to be seen on Earth. So for us, it's like the sun has set, but because the sun reaches higher up in the altitude than we would see down on the surface, it illuminates these beautiful droplets and creates these amazing noctilucent clouds. So the black scene in the foreground and the beautiful clouds in the background are absolutely stunning. Next up, a topic of conversation from the UK today, a tornado. Was it or wasn't it? We can't confirm because we didn't see one of these, a funnel cloud. So a tornado is a violently rotating column of air that hits the ground. We had no observations of funnel cloud hitting the ground across parts of the UK yesterday when we saw the caravan being flipped. But this is from Wyoming in America. And this captures the huge, immense power of a swirling tornado. There was this huge storm in Wyoming, of course. In America, they call them twisters. You can see the very small houses in the distance. Not that they're very small, it's just that that tornado is very big indeed. And he said that luckily the tornado stayed over the crops. It didn't destroy any of the buildings. This huge storm that Cristiano caught was just beautifully captured with the beautiful green ground, and then you have your transitions of thirds. And one thing we're often asked about climate change is it going to make tornadoes more intense, more frequent, more severe? One thing we know is it's shifted where the path and track of them go, but actually whether it makes them more common or more dangerous, or if there's going to be less of them, it's still a study that an area we're studying quite closely. The next picture, a gorgeous optical phenomenon. I love this one. This is called Sharing a Broken Specter. This was Matthew Price. This is on Hendrick Hill in mid Wales. And him and his wife went out for a walk in the hills and they saw this amazing broken spectre. And they thought they would stand in it and then they'd get this beautiful long shadow as the sun was setting. And he used his drone for this one just to get a different perspective. Spectres are caused by shadows of the observer, so their shadow stretching out creates the illusion of this really ghostly figure, and it gives the beautiful, beautiful rainbow effect as well that you can see there. So that's very rare and very, very beautiful to capture. Our next picture is of a beautiful, beautiful scene of the Taj Mahal. So this is called the Rising Taj. So this is a very atmosphere, really romantic, beautiful picture actually because of the gorgeous pinks and the gorgeous orangey hues that was taken. And the photographer woke up very early. He had to walk 4 kilometers to capture this photograph, and he did it in memory of his wife who died during childbirth. And this is where the Taj Mahal was built, due to his wife during childbirth, and it just has lots of haunting images, but lots of eeriness around it as well. And you have the sun rays coming through the trees, capturing this beautiful shadow scene. So yes, if you can get up very early in the morning, these are the kinds of scenes that you can capture. The next one is, well, at first glance, it looks like a heart, and you think, that's a lovely picture of a nice heart. The problem is, this is called worst flooding. This is in Bangladesh, and this is actually not an island, but this is what the landscape looked like after devastating floods in Bangladesh in 2022. Dozens of people lost their lives. Millions were homeless in a heartbeat. And the irony that the scene that's left behind here from the flooding is what looks like a heart. it was really terrible, but it's really important to take photographs to capture the impacts of extreme weather around the world and share them so that people can understand really the true impact. And the problem is that Bangladesh is one of the cities in the world that's going to be most affected by rising sea levels. Here, it's the meltwater from glaciers that are rising sea levels higher than many other countries in the world. And it's really hard to prevent these events happening that are just becoming more and more common. But sometimes you can get something very beautiful from something that's actually very tragic. Next up, we have another photo, but you have to get up very early in the morning to capture these ones. And this is Morning Fog, and this one was in Italy. And this was the title of the Weather Photographer of the Year winner in 2021. So there's a misty path over the River Adda in autumn, and getting up very early to catch the sunrise. This is how this was taken, and the beautiful scene that you can see stretching across the sky when you have beautiful sun rays coming down. They're actually called crepuscular rays, known as God's fingers, and it's literally like God is reaching out from the sky, stretching these sunbeams across the sky. And he was awarded this win because of the beautiful contrast from the light and the dark and the shadows and the beautiful scene of clouds. And again, you can see this invisible cap of the atmosphere, meaning that the clouds haven't risen any higher than the treetop heights because of this invisible inversion with the sinking air. Next up, this is Melvin Nicholas, who was lucky enough to see this one. Now, this was in Scotland, in the depths of winter, in half fearsome place when we have the snow and the strong winds, and he spotted a fogbow. So we're used to seeing a rainbow when we have sunshine and showers and the sunlight refracts in the raindrops internally and comes back to our eyes. Well, this is the same thing but happening when it snows. So this is called a white rainbow with a beautifully arching over this just lone tree. And he used this image to essentially have a beautiful black and white image of what looks like a black and white rainbow, but in fact it is a fogbow. And then onto some color. Now, this one was taken in Tibet, and this beautiful scene lasted for more than 20 minutes. And the photographer said it reminded him of a phoenix in the sky. So these are rainbow clouds. So it's a circumhorizontal arc. So very similar to the scenes that I saw. It's when the light's at 58 degrees high in the sky, cirrus clouds are present, and you have these ice crystals in the cirrus clouds, and they cause the light to disperse, causing this whole rainbow scene to be present along the clouds. And then obviously framed against the beautiful blue backdrop of the sky. It's just absolutely beautiful. And next up, we have white misty rainbow over a winter garden. And again, it's these beautiful contrasting images of the very blue sky from our Rayleigh scattering, the beautiful white foreground as well. And this photograph was taken in the winter time in, I'm trying to see where it was taken. It was taken by Eleanor. It says white misty garden over winter, and it was taken over farmland near where she lived. And she said that there were days that it was 30 degrees below freezing in the nighttime, but this was one of her favourite places to go, and she absolutely loved getting these beautiful scenes when we had the white foggy rainbows. Next up, we have another optical phenomena. There we go. This is a very, very cool one. This is another fogbow when the observer has their back to the sun, and then you have this rainbow effect in the distance. And if you stand on a mountain and look out into the distance, you can capture yourself. Again, this is one of those broken specters that we saw in mid-Wales. And then around the vision of what looks like the sun is another glory as well. Next up, for the first time, somebody in a photo. So this is a beautiful one called Pouring Down, and it's a young girl looking like a geisha, protecting herself from the rain with a traditional waxed umbrella in Kyoto in Japan. So just showing that if you can get somebody perfectly timed, they say never bad weather, just the wrong clothes, and she looks like she's well wrapped up, at least she has her umbrella. Next up, just a few more to go. One of everybody's favourites on their bucket list, these are the Northern Lights dancing over Lake Superior on a misty morning. This is absolutely beautiful. This was taken in Wisconsin. And we have had a lot of actually space weather, lots of aurora borealis and northern lights over the last couple of months. It's been a pretty active one. So if you've been lucky enough to see those, I know that they're very difficult to photograph because you need those damn clear skies, which are not always possible, but that always makes a spectacular image. And then I will finish up with just one more lightning. It is the pinnacle of a storm. We had lightning pass overhead here earlier. My daughter ran inside because she was terrified, and I stayed in the conservatory and listened to the storm roll past. And this was a thunderstorm that was arriving at 7 o'clock at night. And the photographer managed to capture this huge lightning bolt in the middle of a torrential rainstorm. And the lightning bolt struck the fire training tower and caused this incredible scene across the night sky. So every day on Earth, there are 2 million lightning strikes. So a good chance you could perhaps get one of those in your photograph. So a huge selection of incredible photographs. I think the amazing thing is the backdrop of the sky, whether it's the night sky, whether it's the blue sky, whether it's the contrasting black and white. But sunrise, sunset's always a wonderful time to take pictures. And sometimes clouds can ruin things for you, particularly if you were to take nighttime scenes like this, but other times they can be your friends too.
Thank you, Laura. That was absolutely brilliant. I love seeing all the images that have won over previous years, and I really liked seeing your images. So I hope you will be submitting those. Not sure whether or not we're allowed to let you enter, but I really like the optical phenomena. So jealous that you saw those. And that's the thing. I can't wait to see everybody's entries when they start coming in, because it's absolutely brilliant.